We are the Hollywood Paranormal Detectives.
Paranormal Detectives log, stardate 3/9/2022. Just kidding. It is Hollywood Paranormal Detectives. Here we are. We got our phasers set to kill because we got some of the greatest investigation stories you're ever going to hear tonight with our guest Earl Grey. But first, let me introduce you to that man I abducted years ago from his normal life. Here he is, Mr. Brian Ray.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Brian. Brian, are you ready to talk? Because you got some stories, and this topic tonight involves you very much.
Gonna be kind of picky choosy because there are things I'm comfortable talking about and things I'm not.
Well, I mean, it's definitely going down. And let's beamer up now our own little psychic medium, Miss Mandy Mazzy.
Sup.
Now, you say you're an alien yourself, right?
Yes.
All right, well, let's figure 100%. Out why. And you know what? I've invited a man who can tell me how you think that. This is the man, Mr. Earl Grey.
Hey, hi there, Steven. Hi there, Mandy. Hi, Brian. I've met Earl. Steven and Brian before, but Mandy is brand new here for me. It's yes. Wonderful to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
We're related because I think that we're all aliens at heart. I think if you have a love for this stuff and you're attracted to it and that strange obsession that people have,
yes.
Well, there's a reason for that. Now, yes. Why would somebody be obsessed with aliens or with extraterrestrials? How does that happen? You know, I mean, it's not like it's on the front page of the news as far as individuals go and stuff. Yeah. Now it is on the front page of the news as far as sightings. Now, I mean, that's new.
Sure.
The news used to be the biggest rag for debunking of the phenomena and all that, you know, but now, you know, it's like since like 4 years ago or longer than that now, 2017.
Ever since the Black Knight, they've been talking about the Black Knight nonstop and releasing.
But the New York Times, I mean, the front page news on the incident that happened off of Catalina Island, where I'm at here. That's my little realm. In Southern California, and I'll tell you, it's a very active spot. The area there, sort of Long Beach to San Diego, and as well as, you know, my area here, you know, Malibu, and it goes all the way up to San Luis Obispo as far as sightings go.
The USOs.
Yeah, we have same exact thing, you know. Yeah. Have you ever seen the Beatles' Yellow Submarine movie? It should be the yellow USO, because the thing its shape changes. It's like a TARDIS where it's larger inside than it is on the inside. Yeah. It goes between dimensions, uses portals to travel, and you know, goes to alternate universes where you may meet your double who's almost like you, but the hair may be a little strange or different, you know. It's like the Mirror episode of Star Trek, right? I think that, you know, the actual universe is constructed that way, that we do live in a multiverse that's constructed like a fractal, and it has its branches, its tributaries, and you know, in other worlds simultaneously with us right now, there's probably Hollywood Paranormal Detectives talking with Earl Mach 2 and Earl Mach 3 or Mandy Mach 4, and you know, I think that the universe repeats itself with little changes here and there. It's how it works itself out, and
and now
it's just a reality.
You've received a promotion since we talked to you last.
Indeed, yeah. I was chief investigator for MUFON and assistant state director, and now I am actually state director of Southern California.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. We have two state directors in California because it's just a sprawling. I mean, we have the largest. Yeah, it is the number one hotspot for UFO sightings in the world. So my dear friend Ruben Uriarte, my amigo, is up in Northern California, and he does a beautiful job with all the UFO and USO sightings they have there. And I've got a fantastic team here in Southern California. I'm so proud of. Just an amazing team of
How big is your investigation team?
Well, we have 10 people right now, and that's pretty good. For a long time, we had. It's so busy here. We have so many cases, and it can grind on you unless you have the mindset and the propensity to do this stuff. You have to remember that Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who did Project Blue Book, and he was doing this and set the standards for us way back. Going back to the 1940s. And his son, I teach a college class in ufology over at Otis College of Art and Design here, called UFOs, Aliens, and Other Worlds.
Oh, cool.
And we just had Dr. Hynek's son, Paul Hynek, speak to our class yesterday. Such a wonderful guy, dear friend of mine, and just like his father, he's looking for intelligent life on other worlds. Now he's a dimensionalist. His father, I think, started out with the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and as time went on, he moved on to the extra dimensional hypothesis. So he believed that the UFOs were probably coming here from another dimension rather than traveling from a planet, a galaxy away or something.
I've heard a lot about that.
It's all outer space. That's
us
the way
from other dimensions, or us from the future, or us that have figured out that time all happens at once. So they're just visiting. Yeah.
I think a lot of stuff is happening.
Dimensions may also be the way you conquer great distance.
Yes, absolutely. I think that other dimensions, there are some dimensions where the speed of light is not a barrier. That you can travel faster than the speed of light. Here it appears to be a barrier of some sort. There are little loopholes around it, but I think that there's other similar universes.
An experiment.
Yeah, or maybe it might be how God protects the aliens from us. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ideas.
They get older. That's strange. They don't just exist.
Yeah. Well, we do indeed. We live in a world that entropy is a thing that we have to deal with. Things tend to not get better, but they kind of fall apart with time.
Yeah. You have to give them proof of that.
Well, we can throw things against the wall and see what breaks and what sticks and what. But I think there may be other universes where you can throw stuff against the wall, and every time you throw it against the wall, it gets stronger and better. Or every time you're lazy and you eat, too much sugar and butter and carbohydrates or something, that you get thinner and stronger and buffed out. Yeah. I want to live there.
That's the ideal world, right?
I want to go to there.
Let's go to that universe. It sounds like a bit more clement place than this one. But
well, let's take it back. Let's take it way back to our universe, and let's go to
having fun over here.
A young Earl Grey. And what started your interest? What was the first thing that made you go, "Oh, I'm going to get into UFOs and aliens"? And was it like an experience, or was it were you inspired by something? And Mandy, I took your question. I'm sorry.
I know. I was like, "God damn it!"
I didn't mean to.
That's okay. Well, you both asked. How's that? So you want my origin story?
Just where did it start?
I got bitten by a radioactive spider. But anyway, fell into a pit of bats. Right. Unfortunately, I'm not independently wealthy. Well, my story starts with it's actually my mom's story. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, Stephen, but. My mom, she had a very interesting job. She worked in law enforcement, which was unusual for a young woman who was living in Muscatine, Iowa, back in the 1940s. But they needed somebody to take the drunks to the drunk tank over the weekend, and the other cops wanted the weekends off. So my mom got her first real job, other than Heinz ketchup factory, factory, or other than the button factory. That was the other big thing in Muscatine, Iowa, is they had these freshwater oysters and they would make these beautiful buttons, But anyway, my mom got a job in law enforcement. And she did that for a couple of years. And then she and her brother and sister decided to move out to California. I guess, the horizon was ends, and who knows, the future is in California is the way that they thought. My mom came out here and she got a job working for this gentleman by the name of Howard Hughes. He had a company called Hughes Aircraft. Now Howard Hughes, he made his fortune creating the better drill bit. It's very interesting. It's almost like Robert Bigelow, who now is like the big guy behind UFO research with the Pentagon. The Skinwalkers at the Pentagon is the big book right now, in ufology, by Colm Kelleher and those guys. But anyway, just like Robert Bigelow, he made his fortune with hotel, by opening up hotels in Las Vegas, but his passion was aeronautics and aliens and outer space. Apparently, it was the same thing for Howard Hughes. He made his fortune creating the better drill bit, which revolutionized the oil fields, and he took that money and he created his Hughes Aircraft, which was his baby and his passion. My mom worked for him like mid 1950s, about 1955. She was his personal secretary. He had two personal secretaries. It was my mom and another woman. They would communicate over a like a PA system, like Charlie's Angels, if you remember the old show. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, he was a germaphobe. He was afraid of people. He kept to himself. It was just like the movie The Aviator. It was actually quite accurate. A wonderful film and an accurate film. So as long as my mom worked for him, and it was about 5 years, she only saw him in person one time. What they would do is that they would let him leave the building first. It's almost like Elvis has left the building, and they would give the all clear. And then everybody else could go to the parking garage and get their cars and split for the weekend. Apparently, this one time they messed up and they said all clear. He was not out of the hallway yet. So my mom opened the door up and she sees Hughes like opening the door on the other side of this long hallway. Dark hallway, is in silhouette. He had a briefcase, he had a hat on, and he had a cane. He was using a cane at this point. My mom said that he looked like Charlie Chaplin. It was very Chaplin-esque, Yeah. He looked over his shoulder. He was horrified that somebody had seen him and was in the same hallway as he was. Germs, So he like got the hell out of there. The interesting thing is, I guess that Hughes just historically, and if you read about him, he really trusted the women around himself. Not so much the men around him. He felt like they were too competitive, but the women he felt were supportive of him. And he was that way with my mom. My mom told a strange story. When I was 5 years old, she told me that just out of the blue, and I remember this so well, because it was just like, it was very weird. It almost like took the air out of the room when my mom told this story. She said, Earl, I had a really interesting job before I was your mom. And she talked about working in this deep underground military base. Apparently Hughes sent her out to the middle of nowhere with a little security detail. It was two guys. I don't know if they flew. I imagine that they flew there, and it wasn't like there was any lack of air travel with Hughes. That's what they did. But she said that it was the middle of the American desert. She didn't give me any more details about the where of it than that. Just the great American desert, middle of nowhere. She said there was this little shack, and they took me out to this shack. They unlocked it, had like padlocks and all this stuff. And you go into this shack, looked run down. It was just like close to the ground, no roof to it. It was flat topped, and it looked sort of like the entry to the missile bases that we see. You know, you can Google that, and you can see probably exactly what this shack looked like. She went in there, and there was an elevator sitting there.
Just like you wanted to be.
And of course, this thing, it only goes down. It doesn't. There's no upstairs to it, right? You know, it's like this thing is low slung to the desert floor already. You know, it's not like they're not broadcasting that they're there. So anyway, she said that she got into this elevator with these guys, and she thought it would go down a floor or two. Well, it keeps on going down, and my mom said that she was getting very nervous, that she felt butterflies. She felt vertigo, and she described it as butterflies in her stomach. When they got to the bottom of this elevator shaft, the doors opened up, and my mom said that there was a little city down there. She said there was a city under the desert. She said they got around in little golf carts. She said there were lots of scientists down there, German rocket scientists in particular. And because of that, I think that this may have been part of Project Paperclip or Operation Paperclip, where we inherited half of the German rocket scientists, and Russia got the other half. And that is apparently where we sent them, was underground, literally. If you want to hide something, what do? You literally build underground.
Wow.
Nobody can see what you're doing. My mom said that they studied esoteric stuff, that it was just weird things that they studied down there. She didn't elaborate so much, but my mom did say that she knew Werner von Braun was a friend. He would come up on like the Walt Disney, Wonderful World of Disney and stuff on Sundays. And my mom would start talking about, oh, there's my friend, and she said, charming man. He used to call me Betty Grace. My mom's name was Betty Grace Maiden. Grace was her middle name. And apparently he took the first and middle name and put them together. And it was sort of like his pet name for my mom. So I guess that they were close. They were friends, and she would say he's a charming man. She had like personal anecdotes she would tell about him. Like she told one story where she said, well, because I asked her, I got a little older and I remembered all this stuff that my mom told me. That now there's the rub, my mom thought that I was 5 years old. I was going to forget everything she told me, because she talked about ET life as well. My mom said we're not alone in the universe. And she talked about it as somebody with authority that knew this. It wasn't like her opinion. It was like, it was a fact.
She's been shown it. She knows.
She knew. And she talked about that on occasion as well. Up until I was maybe 7 years old. And then it just like, and this, my mom was working my mom was just being a housewife at that point. She eventually wanted to go back to work. She got bored being a housewife. We needed the money. So back in the 1970s, my mom went back to work for aerospace companies. And she worked as, originally she started with Manpower, which is an employment agency, but she kind of took it over. And she was single-handedly populating like the Rockwell Science Center in Thousand Oaks. She was hiring like the people that swept the floors to the astrophysicists, the rocket scientists, the whole. It was like my mom's baby. From there, she got Northrop, she got Boeing. My cousin is still a mucky muck at the Seattle, Boeing plant. My mom was working very, very heavily with Lockheed Skunk Works. She knew Ben Rich. She used to talk with him on the phone. They would laugh and stuff. And all the notes my mom kept, though, were in shorthand. So you couldn't read what she had written down. I mean, there were reams of stuff, But it was just like squiggle. It made Greek look, Koine Greek look like, something that you'd see on the kindergarten wall.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So anyway, this was kind of the knowledge I grew up with, and this is what led me into ufology as I got older. Now, my mom, there was an uncomfortable thing that happened when I was in 4th grade. We had like a show and tell thing that we did every single week. And the teacher decided, because some of the kids, this was like late 1960s. And so, people's moms were sometimes going back to work. Things were kind of changing on the face of the American culture. So it was usually, what does your dad do for a living? Well, this time it was kind of like, what does your mom and your dad do? Does your mom and your dad do something other than just, does your mom something other than just a housewife? Mm-hmm. So I went and I did a show and tell. And we more or less talked about the underground military base and the alien life that mom knows about. And for me, this was just like this, it was like
talking
exciting, this is my mom, Well, the teacher scheduled a parent-teacher conference with Betty Grace Anderson. She married my dad, so now her name was Anderson, of course. Betty Grace Anderson, and my mom went in there, and I don't know how the conversation went, but I know where it went, because afterwards, I was playing on the monkey bars and all that crap, and my mom is driving me home, and I got the lecture. It's like, son, you didn't know any better. I didn't tell you this. And I never should have told you what I told you about working under the desert and life off of Earth, non-human life. And so she said, I never thought in a million years that you would remember this. You were only 5 years old. I thought you would forget. That's why I told you, because I'm not supposed to tell anybody. She said, your mom could get into really horrible trouble. Your mom could go to prison because people don't know about this. It's a secret.
Nobody knows.
You can't ever talk about this to your friends, your teachers, and for God's sake, you can't go in front of your classroom and talk this, because your mom could get into really bad trouble. That was the last that I'd heard about UFOs, from my mom for a long time. I noticed that UFO books had been purged from the grammar school library after that.
Oh.
It was apparently the teacher was not happy about it. And I don't know why it was such an uncomfortable subject for her, but for some reason she felt like it was misinformation that I was giving the kids, or it made her very uncomfortable. Mrs. Johnson, who I loved her too. That's the thing, is I love this teacher. In fact, when I got older, her daughter was my age, and it was like probably my first crush, I think.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that's my origin story. That's where it all started.
It was taken very serious, right? Around that time.
Well, she took it seriously for some reason. She felt like, for some reason, it really upset her and scared her.
Yeah.
And so they made sure that I wouldn't talk about it again. I think they were also worried that I would be ridiculed, and I was, of course, after talking about this stuff, because I didn't know. Yeah. I mean, my mom, it was true. She didn't say that people don't know about this. I mean, I was 10 years old, so when I was okay, what
did she elaborate more, like what she saw?
What I was just gonna tell you. Okay. Well, she didn't talk about this anymore until about a year later, maybe even less than that. The timeline with this one is kind of rough. It might have been before I talked with the class, but I can't remember for sure. I think it was before, actually. But it was probably, I guess, around 1967. You'd have to look at the printing schedule, but it's out there. You can Google it. But they had the the Betty and Barney Hill story was featured in Look magazine. And my aunt brought a copy of the magazine over. My cousins would come out, it was summertime, or maybe I think it might have been Easter break. And we were out there playing Lost in Space, right? Or Lost in Space toys. You pull the string and the little monster, did his thing, attack the flying saucer. But we heard like sort of this heated argument going on in the kitchen. So my two cousins and myself, we ran to the door, and we're doing this thing, not supposed to be there, not supposed to be listening. But my aunt was talking about the Look magazine story, and I'll never forget. She was reading portions of it to my mom, and she got to the point where it said, well, they stuck a needle in Betty Hill's navel. And I remember like I elbowing my older cousin going, what's a navel? It's like the belly button. Shh, 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 shh. The belly button, So I'm like, I remember just standing there and feeling like it was sort of like the air was pulled out of the room. I guess it was the first time I ever experienced ontological shock in such a way. Because when I would think of ETs, even when my mom said that there was life in the universe, my only reference was like the Flintstones, was a great gazoo. Was the Flintstones ET, an ancient alien. Great Gazoo is an ancient alien.
He is.
He's an ancient alien. But, that was my reference point. So my mom was talking about, she said, I think that this is true. She said, what I know about what's going on, I think that this probably actually happened, Mary.
She said it sounded legit, like that.
Yeah.
Like that,
and my aunt
goes
is like,
along with what I've seen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And my aunt is saying, well, that's like bad science fiction. It's like the day the earth stood still, but not so good. And but what I remember feeling was almost like, again, the air was sucked out of, well, I wasn't in a room, we were outside. But and it was a hot day, it was warm out, but I felt like a chill. Yeah. I felt sweat on my forehead. If it just in looking back at it, it was ontological shock. My sense of reality was changed. It was pulled out from under me like a rug, and everything was left standing like it would be. It's like the magician pulls the tablecloth, and that's the whole trick. Is that the dinner, the wine glass is still sitting there and everything's fine, and that externally nothing had changed, but the way that I saw the universe had suddenly changed, and I don't think I was ever the same after that. It sort of set my course. And as I got older, my mom, I took her to see the movie Star Wars, and for some reason that got her talking. I was 21 years old, I believe, at that point. Or no, I was younger than that. It was 1977. So I guess I was actually 19. I was 19. I was 19 years old. So, and we were in Santa Monica.
Star Wars.
Yeah. It had just come out like 3 days before.
Yeah.
Now this actually goes back to my mom's story that her doctors were all in Santa Monica. She felt comfortable there. That's where where her office, where Howard Hughes's office was. Hughes Aircraft. If you go in that area now, it's like Hughes Parkway. Yeah. It was on Sepulveda, Santa Monica. And it was I think it was 666 Sepulveda, if I'm not mistaken. But but anyway, that's where she worked, and my mom kept getting cancers. She got cancer the first time right after I was born. She was 33 years old, and she got uterine cancer. Couldn't have any more kids, and she kept getting cancers, and they were not metastasis. It was like the doctor told her, oncologist told her, it appears that you were radiated or something.
Oh.
So I figure, they had to have had like a nuclear pile or something that they were running the base off of. And I've talked with people like Richard Souter and others who specialize in research in our deep underground bases, and that is a thing that people that worked in the early bases seem to get cancer after cancer after cancer.
Oh.
So my mom went in for her checkup, and she got a clear checkup. It's 1977. I said, well, let's go get lunch and let's celebrate. Let's go see this new movie, Mom. There's this thing called Star Wars. I think you like it. Looks fun. Alec Guinness and these guys are in it. So, and she liked the movie American Graffiti. So it was like, yeah, the guy that did American Graffiti did. So we went to see the film. I didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, my mom didn't know what to expect. When it was over and the curtains closed, there were maybe 4 people in that theater. It was myself, my mom, a couple people scattered in there. Nobody knew about Star Wars yet. My mom opened up and she disclosed. It was like full-on disclosure. It's like, Earl, you have no idea how close to truth this movie is. The different races and interstellar life and the craft and even wars, in space. This stuff is all, she said, it's realer than you will ever know. So it's realer than you'll ever know. Wow. And yeah. And for me at that time, it was an inconvenient truth. Okay. Because I was reading Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Carl Sagan was my hero. I was an amateur astronomer, and I'd kind of put away the idea of UFOs. I'd kind of decided, well, I know what my mom said, but this is what all these guys say, And here my mom is contradicting everything that Carl Sagan is saying, everything that, and I find out now, especially through my friend Paul Hynek, that actually Arthur Clarke believed that UFOs were real. He just couldn't say it in public. So did people like JL and Hynek. They went on an eclipse tour to watch a total eclipse, and it was Neil Armstrong was on the same cruise, and he insisted that he would sit with the Hynek family for all the meals, and that happened. So these are the guys that were saying UFOs were so much bunk in public, but when you got them alone, they all knew it was real, and they were talking about it. That was the
fun of science, was the unknown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's much better to have answers that you can question than it's better to have questions that you can't answer than answers that you can never question.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the paradox of this thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of that's the whole tamale there for you guys. That's how I got into this. That's why I do this.
Gone searching for that shack?
No, I haven't, because I don't know where it was. In some ways, it might have.
I feel like that would be like your Excalibur is like someone.
I've got pictures of similar places.
We're taking you to the shack.
Yeah,
this is it.
Maybe they will. I don't know. I know people from the DOD now. I've had certain people that have confirmed things that my mom said. I've even had some people that have confirmed that at this point, which is new and unusual, the last 6 months, it's been confirmed to me from one of the guys that. Holm Kelleher. I'll even mention his name. I have no reason. He didn't tell me I couldn't say it, but he told me that indeed, your mom worked for Skunk Works and your mom knew a lot of stuff. And we even knew about you, that we knew that, your mom had a son that knew a little bit more than he should have. No.
Wow.
Oh.
And they told me some stuff about my dad and things that they wouldn't have been able to have known unless he was legitimate. So I've kind of, now I actually do have, it has been confirmed for me. Up until 6 months ago, though, it was just my mom and her closest friend and my aunt, and then just growing up around her and knowing that, I mean, she got one of my friends working over at Rockwell Science Center as a broom pusher, and he was the guy who was like saying, "Well, God, it's like your mom hired everybody here, they all know your mom." It's so weird. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, that's where do you want to go now? That's the end of the.
Brian, you're up.
How did you actually discover and get involved with MUFON?
Beautiful question. I was watching well, I started really searching when my mom passed away. All right. It was 1999, and my mom, she got breast cancer for the third time, and she didn't even have any breasts left. So I don't know. They said it was breast cancer, but it was, I guess, the breast bone, and this one finally metastasized to her lungs, and she was tired. She didn't want to deal with it anymore. So my mom but she was confirming stuff. I think she was firming things up for me, knowing that she was going to pass away. And I wanted her to sue the government because I felt like they hadn't taken care of her. I felt, she had done all this stuff and had worked for Lockheed, that she was part of the SR, not SR-71, but the F-118 stealth bomber. My mom had her fingerprints were all over that thing.
Wow.
I mean, she had to go on a field trip at one point where she couldn't tell us where she was going, and but she said, "Well, I can call you guys once a week." This is before cell phones and stuff.
Yeah.
But they probably wouldn't have let her have a cell phone there anyway. But she couldn't tell us where she was and where she was working. But once a week, we'd get together over at my mom and dad's house, and we'd get the phone call, which sounded terrible. It's just like, but she was obviously calling from a third world nation kind of situation. So my mom came back after about a month and a half, 2 months being gone, and there was sand in her suitcase. She had a lot of gold with kind of like Saudi stuff on it.
Oh.
And she had lots of headscarves. And she finally talked.
They sent her somewhere else.
Wow.
Yeah, she wouldn't talk about where she'd been, but she finally did talk a little bit. She said, "Well, yeah, I was. You can kind of guess where I was at." A week after she came home is when the very first Gulf War started. The shock and awe thing that Papa Bush, did not W,
Sword,
but
right?
Yeah.
Was the first.
It was the first time that we had used our stealth bombers, and apparently there is some kind of technology. Some even say that it used a anti-gravity technique where it would almost stall midair, and it would drop its bombs. So it would be dropping the bombs from like a hovering position. Yeah. And so anyhow, my mom was involved with Lockheed. She was talking with those guys all the time, with Ben Rich. When I heard about, now I'm sort of like, I've got books on Lockheed and Skunk Works and stuff back here. And now I know all about Ben Rich, but back then it was just one of my mom's business guys. I didn't know who he was, but I knew the name. And they would laugh. They'd be on the phone and I'd be joking around and stuff. But yeah, that was my mom, and and it certainly did pique my interest, and that's
and
how I got into MUFON. Though was I kept seeing the name MUFON. Going back to Brian's original question, I kept seeing the name MUFON. It was one of those steady constants that I would find.
That's how I found it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like it seemed like every serious UFO book that I would read, the good ones would mention MUFON, the scientific method, and then
like if you want to be respected, you have to say you got this info from MUFON.
They were doing it using the scientific method, and it wasn't just woo stuff,
Yeah.
It was just respectable the way that they were doing it. And so I looked them up. Hainer One show is on, and I liked that. My wife and I were watching that on a regular basis, and it was usually really good. Once in a while, they get something silly on there, but it was better than the average UFO show, and I respected the scientific heft that they had, the way that they approached the subject. And so that absolutely gleaned my interest, and I looked into it, and I joined MUFON, and then I decided to become a field investigator. It's like you can only learn so much reading books. Yeah. Hands-on is the way to go. Hands-on is the only way to go.
All right, so let's say I see a UFO and I call MUFON. Like, what steps do you take to follow up on that sighting, and how does MUFON categorize sightings and things like that?
Well, we use Hynek's system of the CE1 to CE5 now, of course, because there's as my friend Ray Hernandez and his group, they speak of CE5 as HICE, human. Oh, what's the acronym? Human initiated contact events. So so you've got it. It goes all the way to HE5 now, but or CE5. But that was began by J. Allen Hynek, who's my hero, who is the scientist, the great astronomer and scientist who pretty much ran Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
And he started off as a skeptic, like Carl Sagan. When he got to the end of the line with Project Blue Book, he decided that it wasn't just debunking misidentified objects and hoaxes, that there was actually something to it. And he became I think the first true ufologist.
Oh, Brian's got to go.
Sorry, I'll be right back.
It's all right.
Okay. I thought he was going to ask this deep pertinent question, and then he disappeared. The aliens took him.
How often do you go, and what makes you like, this one's a good case, I want to go to this location and find out more,
Well, I've been doing this for a while now, and I've got I've personally investigated and closed over 750 cases. Wow. I have to count them at this point. The last time I counted, we were around 750. So I know I'm over that.
Of those, how many would you say were confirmed positive and confirmed?
Such a great question. You know your stuff. Well, Hynek said that 5% to 10% of UFO reports are interesting, and the rest are misidentified, prosaic objects, either man-made, natural, and we do have hoaxers out there, unfortunately, and you have people with sadly psychological problems sometimes that will hear voices in their head and think that they're all aliens talking to them and things like that.
We know they're ghosts, though.
So. Yeah. Or perhaps they're from,
it's all the
us
same
from
thing.
another dimension. Yeah. People, you're seeing your dad who's still alive in this dimension, or else the time line isn't quite synced with ours. Yeah. So you're seeing your dad 20 years ago, and thinking he's a ghost, or it might be a ghost. I don't know. But I'm open to either or and all, at this point. The universe is stranger than we can imagine.
Wow.
It truly is.
700 cases. Of all those cases,
you learn pattern recognition after a while. You get so that you can, like, as soon as I see like a drone on flash mode, I know exactly what I'm looking at. It could be out of focus, and I still know what I'm looking at because I know the time, the sequence of the lights, and it's just ingrained because I've seen it so many times.
Oh, it's like a detective not releasing that one bit of evidence, and if you say that, then I know you're legit.
Yeah, exactly. I don't tell everybody everything that I know about this phenomena. I keep maybe half of the information to myself so I can recognize things when I see them, you know?
Wow.
Sometimes I mean, I try to share this stuff with my fellow field investigators, those who work with me, and so that we're on the same page. But there are markers that we look for. I mean, in MUFON, you know, I work both as a field investigator, you know, state director, which is, you know, using the scientific method to find out whether this was an actual UFO or a misidentified object or happening, right? I also work for MUFON's ERT, which is the Experience or Resource Team. Kathleen Marden started that group. I think that it's the most intelligent grouping of UFO scientists in the world. I mean, it's all doctors and philosophers and psychologists, psychiatrists, people that are professional remote viewers. They work for the FBI. People work for, you know, that solve cold cases that have been sitting there for 20 years, and you remote view, and these people get these amazing answers and
you
conclusions.
would be shocked at how much the FBI uses that stuff.
I'm not shocked. I know they do.
Mandy, I never told you this story. We met Amy Allen of the Dead Files, and someone in the audience asked her a question about, well, how'd you get into this? And she was like, well, I was homeless for a while, and then I worked for the FBI for like 20 years, and then I started. But she just threw that in there. I worked for the FBI for like 20 years.
I know so many people that work for the FBI.
It was just crazy, like, whoa, dude. Like, yeah.
I know. I mean, some of the conversations I hear are like, well, I won't work for the military anymore because their motives are really bad. Won't work for the CIA. Motives are really bad. FBI, I'll work for the FBI. They're good. They you know, they help people. They solve murders. So usually if the person's ethical, they'll wind up working for the FBI. If they're interested in the money and stuff, well, you know, it's sometimes for some of the other three-letter acronyms.
Nefarious motives.
Yeah. But you know, I will tell you something that I have observed and that I think is real and true, that if your motives are bad, and you're trying to contact aliens, or you're trying to remote view stuff, or that you will get a mirror effect. And oftentimes what you get back is not going to be the honest truth of what actually is happening. Yeah. Because we think, and I've thought this way. Everybody's thought this way, that in a scientific manner that we are observers, and that we put a sample on the microscopic slide, or we look at some distant thing through our telescope, right? But we have this misconception that we are somehow separate from what we are observing, and that is a fatal flaw. Because you are injected into whatever you are investigating. You are there as well. Your very breath and just your presence and your thoughts, and your motives, all of that comes into play, and that filters what you are getting back. So you always have to remember that you are part of the answer that you're getting, and that you sort of have to take that into account.
Yeah.
People with really strong motives, or to weaponize something. I hear this over and over again, that the CIA or the DOD and people in the Pentagon, they're doing their job when they try to weaponize, right? This is what we pay them to be paranoid for us.
Yeah.
That is what we pay them to do. I mean, we pay them to look for glitches in the system and ways that we can be destroyed that we normally don't think about. And that's what they do. So it's not like they're going outside of the realm of what they're supposed to be doing. But what we have to realize is that what they get back in their investigations is problematical, because depending on what the person's motives are, and especially like I have a friend from Bogota, Colombia, who has had many instances where he believes he has met humanoid ETs, and he said it's always a blessing, it's always this beautiful thing, and he said, I don't understand the sightings and the visitations that you guys have in America. He said it's always a blessing here, and it's always like they'll bestow a gift on you or knowledge and it's very peaceful. But you guys get abducted, and it's very militaristic, it seems like, and you're treated like lab rats. Even there's like no.
But don't they say
no respect?
In a room full of abductees, they will all say, "Whoever would like to be abducted again," they'll all raise their hands.
Oh, isn't that weird? Yeah,
because it's the number.
Well, that's not everybody now. No, everybody won't raise.
That's ever happened. It's such a defining moment in their existence.
Yes. If the person has had time to think about it, if they've had time to work this into their own lives, and they've had time to see how it's really affected them, the way that they approach life now, and if they have new gifts, for instance, synchronicity seems to follow abductees.
Mandy. Now, what were you saying a little before the show? That you're not sure if you've been abducted, but you.
Oh, I didn't say that. I've had a visitation.
Mandy was saying though that she thinks she thinks she might have been, right, Mandy?
Yeah, it's very confusing for me, and it was weird because for a long time, it actually came out of nowhere, but like for a long time I had like a genuine fear of when I would go to sleep that they were going to appear outside my window, and I had no idea where this fear came from. It just came out of nowhere.
That's a marker. That's
I was like, why am I
paralleled
so terrified?
Is that to your mediumship abilities?
Well, and see, that's the thing too, is now that I'm older, I've had quite a few. I work with them now. Well, I don't know if it's the same.
Wonderful.
People, but I work with them now in my mediumship. I've had a lot of visitations. They communicate with me telepathically. And it's almost funny because now it's all very like in my meditations and things like that. Whereas, because when I was younger, I felt like the actual visual, seeing them visually in front of me would just absolutely terrify me. So it's almost like they are coming to me now in a way that I can handle. So it was really weird. And I've always questioned, like, I've had these like dreams of being on a different planet and being on a craft and communicating with these people.
Wow.
And this fear just came out of nowhere when I was younger. And so I just always question. I'm like, did I go through something and obviously don't remember? And that's where that instinctual fear came from. Like, I don't know, but how many times have you heard something like that, from people?
Countless times. And they're always, and people ask, what's the profile of the general abductee or visitee? A lot of people are visited. Everybody isn't taken. A lot of people are taken. A lot of people are floated right through the window. They don't bother to open the window. They float you through the glass somehow. Yeah. That's they make the ceiling semi-permeable, and they bring you right up through. And what I believe they do is that they create a little bubble universe where their physics works and our physics are kind of shuffled off to the side, or perhaps enhanced. I think this is the way that they go, I think this is the way that the Tic Tac was able to go Mach 18 times the speed of sound and not create a single sonic boom. I mean, they caught this thing on radar. They caught this thing on video.
Yeah.
They have the FLIR video, everything. So many eyes on that object that is crazy. You know the story. Kevin Day is a dear friend of mine. What happened there in 2004 at the Princeton and the USS Nimitz off of Catalina Island, I think was nothing less than the human timeline being changed. I mean, if you talk to Kevin, he says that at one point, everybody on the radar deck, the CO is there and they were waving their hands in the air and they wanted to fire on this thing. And he said that suddenly everything shifted. That the Tic Tac UFO came closest to them, and everything on the deck of the Princeton, that's where Kevin was. He said that suddenly everything went from waving hands and people screaming and barking out orders to everybody just being peaceful. It was like completely
they hit him
around.
Yeah.
So and he believes that the human timeline was changed right there. And I think so too. There's a thing called the Valet-Davis effect, and I've really been studying this thing, as well as other people. Apparently, the Pentagon is very, very interested in the Valet-Davis effect. And the way that the Valet-Davis effect works is they say that if you have a close encounter with an alien or a craft, like we're talking a close encounter, okay, like 100 feet or closer, that it's a contagion, and that you start exhibiting attributes of ETs. Like people become psychic, telepathic. They become empathic. People become empaths. Synchronicity becomes a thing where it becomes normal for you to have meaningful coincidences that happen over and over and over again that seem to be leading you to a certain form of knowledge. That becomes a normal thing.
Yeah.
The people that tell me that they've experienced this stuff are police officers, military people. They're lawyers. They're just usually Mensa members. It's not like the hillbillies, I mean, although hillbillies get abducted too. But
but even with ghosts and aliens, for someone to come with you with a story and look at them and like they're trying to get nothing from it. They're not trying to get you to like them. They're not trying to get money. They're not trying. They're benefiting in no way from telling the story.
Why would these people do this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Why
are we locking ourselves in prisons at night?
It is because we have been indelibly changed by the ineffable, the unexplainable. And there's something just so beautiful about it. It's like the missing piece. It was the missing piece in my life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like, the people I know now, and the people I've been introduced to, and maybe even ETs, because there are people that live on Earth that I believe that are not from Earth, and I'm not the only person that thinks this. There's some very
Are you saying
interesting
you think
people.
there's Earthlings reproducing somewhere else? And then
I think that they use either. I think that they can be very, very powerful with the images that they give us. So you may be talking to, say, something that would look very unhuman, but they're able to wrap themselves in a telepathic image of a human that's so detailed that you accept it. That there's that, and I think that there are others that live in avatar bodies. And they're I know. It's absolutely
my avatar
crazy.
and me don't get along.
Now I've been told, this is what I've been told, is that it's much like Avatar, where they apparently they can create a body, and this explains why all the DNA farming that was going on from 1960 up until recently. Now, in the experiencer resource team, I mean, we speak with thousands of experiencers because there are thousands of experiencers, thousands and thousands of them out there. And we hear many of the same things over and over and over again. But one of those things is that there are those that have avatar bodies that are not from this planet that live among us. And I've been told a couple of times, I've been told,
sorry.
Bless you. You say bless you for a cough. It's usually a sneeze, but that didn't sound good. I've heard this from not just, people in the UFO field, but from serious scientists that I know and people that work for, I mean, if you read the book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, many of those people I know and I'm in contact with, and they all say the same thing. It's interesting about that book. They call it Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, but they barely go into the subject of the Skinwalker. Yeah. But apparently there are people that have that can shape change, whether that they can do it physically. That it's some alien gift that we don't have. I wonder if maybe it's some sort of accelerated form of the elephant man disease. That with that, they have their bones are malleable, and they can. The elephant man was able to, and not that he wanted to, but his form kept on changing into something that didn't look like a human. And I think that perhaps it's something similar that they're able to do very quickly and then change back. And this one person that I've spoken with quite extensively with, and that I know quite a bit about through the people in the book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. For her, she began going through the change, almost like a child would hit puberty and start going through sexual changes. But for her, she went through that normal stuff, but also there was this weird, physiological thing where at a certain point in the month, they would find her 5 miles away from home, naked, covered in fur. Wow. And blood. And she would, thankfully for her, she lived on the edge of a huge forest primeval. And people would generally help her. They would throw her a bathrobe, throw her clothes, and they would call her father or her mother for her to pick her up. But I know in her case that they wound up sending her to. They wound up sending this young lady to live in Vatican City. I've had that confirmed. Wow. Yeah. I mean, the father was a minister. He thought that she was possessed or something like that was going on. And, but she, amazing story. And she is fully aware of who she is and why she is here. And she's not from Earth originally. I've known this person for about 6, 7, 8 months now. Contact. I at least speak with this person once every day, usually, just to keep in touch and see, because it's a weird world for her. Yeah. It's not her world, but she loves this world and loves us. I mean, she loves humanity, and that's why she's here. She thinks that there's a reason. Wow. But this is so out there. It's so damn strange, and it's not what I went into MUFON to do, actually, to tell you the truth. I mean, I thought I was going to MUFON to look at nuts and bolts spaceships and to try to figure out what planet they were coming from, and I but it's so weird, I mean, careful what you wish for. I went to MUFON hoping that I would learn the things that my mom said, that it's realer than you'll ever know, son, realer than you'll ever know. And I don't think that's so now. I think that I probably know as much as my mom did, maybe even more, because I haven't had to sign any non-disclosure agreements Yeah. That's a secret. If you have security clearances, you're only going to know so much of the story. That's how they keep things in control, as they compartmentalize in officialdom. So they'll give you the part of the story that is pertinent to your realm of investigation, but that's all you get. That's normies. We can keep digging. Thankfully.
Or they'll send you to a small section. You might learn about the Greys, but you want to know about the tall whites or the reptilians. They all keep you separate. Well, I've heard stories about underground bases where they keep different species on different levels, and the different species have different purposes, and they're studying different things for the government.
There's a lot of underground bases, a lot of them. Yeah. I mean, I get cases that are really strange that are from usually they're connected to a military base. Well, I have this one recurring story.
Yeah.
Where, and I personally believe that what's going on is some kind of psyop that the military is just trying to find out how people will react to this. But I've had a thing where DoorDash food delivery people will be called off to a Air Force base or National Guard base or naval base.
So this is a new phenomenon.
This is a new thing. It's
the pandemic.
And the first time I got a case like this, I was just like, oh,
that makes sense.
this crazy person, right? I mean, I don't want to think that way, but I'm still human, and we tend to be skeptical sometimes, especially if you have a scientific background. I'm a nurse, so I have that, and an amateur astronomer, and I've always been a science geek, But here is something that I've had this happen to a couple of people who are not related. Absolutely different reactions, absolutely totally different people that this happened to. The one person was called to go deliver food to this one military base. This one was in California. And they got there, and they're just doing the normal stuff. He's handing the bag of food off to the soldier that looks perfectly normal right now. And as he's handing the food over, the guy goes to this transformation in front of him where he changes from a human into a tall gray with black eyes.
Oh, wow. A tall gray.
A tall gray.
Mm-hmm. Tall grays.
And he got this very malevolent feeling from this being. This DoorDash guy got really pissed off. He apparently dropped the food. He ran to his car. He's like honking until they opened the gate, and
Let me out of here.
Yeah. And I got I got a case from this guy, and he just sounded horrified. And I'm like, I didn't really know what to do with it. It's like, I've never heard of anything like this. And this is so obscure and just so,
But why would he make it up?
I know.
Go as far as to find.
And for this case, because he didn't have any proof that this happened, it was no eyewitnesses that he could call on. I gave it insufficient data. As was my disposition. I had to close the case. There just was no way that I could prove that it was anything other than this guy's imagination. And it was unlike any other case. We look for markers. We look for things that are in common with other cases, Well, just recently I got another case that came in, and this was another, DoorDash type service. And this woman, it was out of the state. It was not in California. And the same scenario. She was, they ordered food, and she got there. She said this guy came up, and he was in camo, just like a normal looking red-haired guy. She said he was a ginger. That's how she described him. So she's talking with him, and she said he gave him the bag of food, and she sees this light hitting the bag of food, like this blue light, iridescent look. She looks up at him, and she sees the guy but his face now is really light, and she sees these two goggles like flashlights that are shining on the food.
Like scanning the food.
Yeah, she said, "Oh my God, they think that I'm trying to poison them. Is this what they're scanning the food?" Well, her eyes start accommodating to the light, and she notices that it's not two flashlights; it's the guy's eyes. They've turned into these two giant, like fish eyes that are like this.
Wow.
Light is coming from their eyes. So she's looking at this, and she says, slowly, this guy with this ginger with red hair and a camouflage little badge, the hat, the whole deal, like you would expect somebody in a guard shack to look like, that he changes into a beautiful woman. She said it was the most beautiful woman that you had ever seen. She said, I keep thinking, oh my God, she's so pretty. She's so pretty. Like, I feel pretty. Oh, so. And
you know what? And that triggered something in my head.
I bet it did. We're not done yet now.
I had a dream that I was talking to someone, but they kept changing who they were in front of me. And now I'm thinking about the dream. I can't think of where I was in the dream. But I remember the conversation.
That might have been a little bit of wisdom.
They kept changing from different people, and I would talk to them as if they were my friend, and then they would change, and then I would change sort of the way I talk. Maybe trying to see which way you could get the most information out of me.
Yeah.
And it just popped in my head like a visual. No.
Well, the way the woman, the DoorDash person, reacted in this case, she said that she felt like she was doing her best to keep her composure, to act like nothing weird was going on whatsoever. And she said that it took everything within herself to do this, to not run, to not throw the food at the creature.
Yeah.
But she felt like this compelling within her that, I'm going to keep my composure. I'm not going to act like anything's out of the ordinary here. So she's talking to this beautiful woman now, and she said she noticed something weird about the hair. It was black raven hair. And then she notices that the hair is getting dingy looking, like ratty and dingy, like it was unwashed, like it had never been washed. and then the hair starts changing the rest of this creature's look again, and she said at this point, you could see the big goggle eyes again. It was like the red hair again. Wow. But now it was like a cross between the creature from the Black Lagoon and some guy, like a private in his camouflage and the little cap,
That's
so she said finally she got the guy's payment, and to finish a payment for a DoorDash person, you have to take a photograph of where you were at. Okay. She forgot to do all that. She got rid of the food. She got the payment. She didn't lose her composure. She acted like nothing was wrong. She said that the creature looked disappointed, like she had screwed up somehow. Like he was expecting her to have some kind of reaction. There was no reaction. She's like, well, I have to take a photograph of something here to finish the transaction. Yeah. That is the word I was looking for. So she takes a picture of the guard shack. Now she said that the creature is walking backwards, staring at her. Is walking backwards, didn't turn around to walk to, is like staring at her while walking backwards back to the guard shack. She took the picture of, they had like an airplane on stilts in the background. I mean, it was like an Air Force base. I don't think I'm not giving anything away as far as who the person or where they are or anything. I keep people anonymous. But so she took a photograph of the jet that they had sitting there on display. And she said that the creature in the camo is like, obviously shakes his head, yes. Like
take the picture.
It's good that you didn't take the photo of me, that you took the photo of the plane. So she, at that point, she got in her car. She jammed out of there. She got home. She didn't. I mean, she called in sick for the rest of the day. That was it. She was done, finished. She goes home and she tells her husband about what happens, and he tells her, there's this organization called MUFON. Why don't you call them up? That's what I do. This is my life.
Wow.
But how? What? So what is that? What was going? Was that a real alien?
Yeah.
Was that us? Like
now,
pretending to be aliens?
I recently saw something about the tall whites, and that's why they're in my head. And they thought of them as horses. They thought of them as horses in the desert for so long. And they go, "Why don't you go out there?" They sent that one guy out and told him, "Don't talk to the horses." And then as he got closer to the horses, they ended up being, they're humanoid, tall, red-haired, white-haired creatures. And they were, so that's what the tall whites kind of are, very rare. And I guess he's the only one that's ever encountered them, is this one guy who was stuck in this military base in the desert.
Sorry.
What?
So I have to share something. I don't think I've shared this with anyone.
I love how things.
Well, I want to hear
it.
So now that we're talking, because I was going to talk about how the tall grays are really common right now.
I've never heard of tall grays.
And that's another story. I have to save that because I heard something from someone who works with NASA about these tall grays. But I was in Virginia City last year. And I was at the out in the desert. And I was at the Silverland Inn and Suites. And the back of that place, like it's on the edge of Virginia City. So behind it, it's just land. Okay. And our room faced out that way. And we had come off an investigation. I was with my dad. He went straight to sleep. And I'm like wide awake. Okay. So I start to try to fall asleep, but something was like, look outside. And I was like, I don't want to look outside. And I don't want to look, but something was telling me to look outside. And so I kind of got up and I looked outside, and out in the distance, clear as day, I could see a tall white figure standing there. And of course I'm staring, I'm like, okay, is it because I've been up so late? Like am I really seeing what I'm seeing, right? Because
I do that too. I do that to myself, Mandy, as well. Yeah.
Questioning yourself, right?
Yeah,
you're like, I mean, I know I see shit all the time, but like, am I really seeing this? And it's this tall white figure. It's kind of glowy, clear as day, looks like a freaking alien. I mean, just like the normal alien, right?
Like what you would draw if you had to make something.
But tall and kind of illuminating white. And so I was like, Nope. So I get back into bed, and then all of a sudden I hear noises, and I'm like, no, oh my God, I cannot do this right now. Like, I'm so scared. Like, there's something watching me.
Jesus.
I go outside. So again, I've never told anyone this. So I go outside and I look out the window. All of a sudden, that tall white is gone, and there's 8 wild horses in a group right below my window. And I was like, oh my God, because I've never seen like horses.
There were no horses.
Yeah, they probably weren't horses.
Okay, so now that you guys are talking about it, I'm like, wait, hold on, because
I've never heard this before. That is amazing.
I don't know what. I just listened to a 2-part podcast about the guy who wrote the book about the tall whites, and they told him there's a really fast white horse in the desert that it'll never come close. And once he tried to tame it, he realized it wasn't a horse; it was a creature. And then they all started coming.
Question, because I even was like, Dad, I was like, Dad, wake up. I was like, Dad, wake up. Look, there's all these horses. I saw an alien. And he's like,
oh my God.
No, and he's like not having it. And and the horses, they were there and then they were gone. And I would just,
those weren't horses.
Goodness gracious.
So anyway, so that just triggered that whole thing, because I was like, I need to share.
I love that. Well, they call it a screen memory, right? Yeah. Michael Cleland, I believe, he wrote a wonderful book about how people will see owls, and it's and I hear this over and over again where it's people it's repetitive. where they have an alien encounter, but what they remember seeing is like a 4-foot tall owl. It's like, no, there's no such thing as a 4-foot tall owl.
I have my
mom. They don't exist.
I'm going to tell a quick story.
You tell it, Brian.
Hey,
Yeah.
I tell a quick
You
story.
go for it, Brian.
This is coming. I've been an abductee since I was a child. I don't really talk about it a lot, but only took me.
We've talked about it a little bit.
Steve about it.
Yeah, it's been a while, but you told me a little bit.
Yeah, I have
3 years ago.
It's not It's I can't tell. There's stories I can't tell because I can't involve family members who can narrate much of this stuff. But I don't have their permission to talk. I don't want to out it.
Yeah.
I have stories like that too. So I absolutely understand, Brian.
I hadn't had anything that I knew of happen in over 20 years. Recently, just a couple of months ago, I went to bed and I remember vague memories of a long time ago as far as the experience. There's paralyzation, fear, knowing something's there, this kind of stuff. Now, when I go to bed, I had gone to bed. I hadn't made my bed that day. I just climbed into an unmade bed. And all I remember is later on waking up and the bed was basically made on top of me. Perfect spread out blankets and everything. And I'm like, oh man. And the first thing I thought was, well, I'm going to, I got to talk to my family member who was experiencing things. So I got in touch with them and they said, oh man, I'm having the same kind of stuff again. Then, like I said, it had been decades. And
that'll happen.
So I'm like, all right, well,
your file came back up into rotation.
But
who knows why? But that happens.
What ended up happening was, and there's a lot of history I'm not going into, but I was at work the next day, or I contacted this person, family member, and they hadn't immediately gotten back to me. Then they got back to me and told me that stuff was going on. Then later that day, I left work early because my left arm swelled up. And so I went home and I contacted this family, or actually, I had my arm swelled up before I had heard the response. This person ended up telling me, "Oh, I've been having a lot of trouble with my left arm." And I was like, well, I just,
really, wow,
my left arm swelled up. And, what kind of trouble have you been having? And I never got a response. This was all over text message. The next day, I'm sitting out I'm at my back porch with a friend who was staying with me, and he had fallen asleep on the back porch the night before, or he said, "Oh man, I meant to tell you a couple nights ago there was a big owl out here, but then I realized it was just a dream."
Oh my!
What the fuck?
Yeah, got everything going on there. That is pure. That is so.
I mean, Earl,
so connected to phenomenology there.
And I'm not gonna mention, but me knowing some of Brian's stories and hearing that story is very different for me.
Wow.
Let's just say there's a history with arms.
Yes, that's what I was remembering.
Kids will see cartoon characters. Okay, kids will see cartoon characters. I have an inexplicable memory of a talking chess piece when I was a little kid.
Oh, wow.
When I was visiting my cousins in San Francisco, I was maybe 4 years old, before I got the alien talk from my mom. But I remember there was this chessboard with all the pieces, and I'm having this conversation with, what was that? Was that crazy childhood just fantasy? I don't know. It seems, I remember it so well that it was, I think of it that it was probably some kind of communication, but they'll use a screen memory. They'll give you and it's just like, and I think that perhaps what was going on in the military bases, what I was telling you, that maybe that's us, that we're trying to see what we can do and what humans are capable of dealing with and what they're not capable of dealing with. I mean, I think that there's psychological studies. They're trying to figure out if we're all going to go nuts if disclosure happens, or if it's going to be a good thing for us. And maybe that's a part of it. Also, I was mentioning earlier how it seems like people that are in the military or that have the motives behind the military, like weaponization and stuff, that they tend to meet the scarier aliens. That's the ones that get abducted and that, where they go, we're going to take your soul, because that's a recurring theme. I mean, there are people that are told we're going to steal your soul and we're going to do this to you and that. And then it doesn't happen there, but it was just almost like they were purposely terrorized for some reason.
My experiences
it's usually military
have all been fear-filled and negative. Whether
have they been?
Whether or not the effect on my actual life has been negative, I don't judge that. But
how do you feel about? Does it just piss you off, or do you feel wonder about it? Do you hope it never happens again, or what?
Yes,
what do you feel?
had been very happy 20 year plus years.
I imagine so. Yeah.
But, but there were things like I mean, I don't want to drag the show down or anything, but
that's okay.
This same family member when we were still living at home with my parents. We had a lot of we had this moment of realization that something was going on, and there's the whole series of events with that is crazy. But once we started discussing it, I was like, well, one time I had this dream where I woke up and I was really close to the ceiling.
Oh,
and I said, and there was a vent above my face in the ceiling. And the vent opened, and this family member said, and a spider-like robot came out and wrapped around your head.
Oh, crap.
And I'm like, and that was finishing my sentence. And,
that's no fun. I don't like
that. These are the kind of things I have.
Wow.
And,
but you're okay.
I've heard enough hints from older family members over the years to know that stuff has been going on in our family for generations.
I don't understand the more negative stuff that happens to some people. I know it happens. I had a visit back when I started up with MUFON that and my wife was part of it. She doesn't like me to talk about it. She doesn't want her family members to think we're crazy. But no, I did see entities, and I was paralyzed, and I went through all that stuff. And we both remember the house flooding with light and not being able to move and stuff like that. And I'm not sure. For me, when it happened, it scared the hell out of me. The negative part of it was really, I was afraid I was going to lose my position with MUFON because my state director at that time was who I love is my friend Jeff Krause, but he was still kind of nuts and bolts about the phenomenon. Which is kind of normal. People think of it, you join MUFON, you think you're going to be tracking spaceships. Winds up being more like what you guys do. It's the, there's this connection with.
And you almost become more of a psychiatrist's counselor.
Yeah, that's true. And so much, so many of the things that happen around the UFO phenomena are common as well with the ghost and spiritualism stuff, where you have, for instance, apports, things that appear. That's a thing with people who have had close encounters. I know that happens with Kevin Day. I know it happens with Ray Hernandez. I know that it happened with J.Allen Hynek. I heard that from his own son, Paul, but it's this weird superhuman thing that manifested for these people that had close encounters, So I think that this phenomena that's interacting with us, I think it's always been here. I think it's been called different things in different times. People thought of it as gods at one time. They called it fairy. They called it mysterious airships back in the late 1800s. There was even a cow abduction and stuff, with one of the airships, right? I think that this thing has been with us forever and ever. I think it's interacting with us. I tend to think it's probably dimensional.
It's a part of Earth.
I think it's part of what's going on.
As opposed to everything's going on, it's all here.
Well, I think that it may be, I'm not going to limit it to Earth. I think that there's something extraterrestrial going on. I think that there's probably something interdimensional going on. I think it's the whole gamut. I think some of the spaceships that people are seeing are us from the future.
It could be all of it. It could be us from the future.
Okay, John Lennon.
Aliens.
I've talked with May Pang before about this. Okay, John Lennon's girlfriend at the time, when he and Yoko were busted up mid 1970s, they were living in an apartment in uptown New York, where they saw a flying saucer fly between the buildings, had purple lights that were spinning on the bottom of it.
That sounds just like Dan Aykroyd's sighting in Cincinnati.
It went right to their picture window and it hung there staring at them.
Watching and looking. Yeah.
Okay, my old dear friend Chris Squire from the band Yes. He was my close friend. I met him. Strange, mysterious synchronicities happened even back then because I knew his wife before they were married. She was a friend of mine, Scotland Squire. Scotland Taylor was her name back before, and she loved Chris because she met him when she was too young to have anything with him. So she kind of tracked him purposely. This is a girl she's a MD. She's like a serious smart person, but she was in love with Chris Squire. Well, she wound up marrying him. She wound up marrying him. So I got to know Chris. I got to know one of my biggest music heroes. He is a great bass player with the band Yes. He had an encounter exactly like John Lennon's. For him, it was 1977. He was in England on the way to a gig. They were on tour behind their album Going for the One at the time. And so it was at this point, they all wanted their own RV with their own driver, right? all 5 members of the band, or they didn't want to travel together. So Chris needed to stop off and use nature's bathroom. So he had the driver pull their caravan, that's what they call an RV in England, pulled the caravan over to the side of the road. He went out, he's peeing on a rock, and he feels like he's being watched. Looks up in the air, and there is this silver, beautiful,
perfect
this guy.
saucer. Yeah.
You see this guy here, with the little windows and the purple lights on the bottom spinning around. Just like John Lennon's story. Yeah. He's looking up at this thing. He said that it sat there hanging up. He finished doing his business. Zip back. Sorry, TMI, Mandy. He said that the flying saucer tipped to the side, hung like that for about 3 seconds, and then shot off so fast he said that you couldn't track it with the human eye. And it changed Chris's life. I mean, if you look up the song called Aliens, just put in go to YouTube, put in Aliens / Chris Squire, and this song will come up where he talks about aliens being us from the future. We talked about his story. He told me this about 3 a.m, and it's like, what do you reckon that was? Earl? Who do you think that was? And I thought, well, no, I know.
Somebody's checking in on
that if I could, go back in time in the future, if I was a musicologist and I loved Yes, I would want to track you, and then of course, Chris is like, oh, they probably heard how well endowed I was too. They wanted to prove it. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Well, that goes. If you've ever heard Dan Aykroyd's, I go back to Dan Aykroyd because he's my hero. His motorcycle story. Aykroyd. He was riding a Harley up the back streets of backwoods of Washington. He was riding a Harley, and he said the street lights, like you white, 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 and then it kind of like started getting like white, white. There's no gap, and it just stayed white. And so he stopped and he looked up. He said the street light was so bright. And then he looked back behind the way he came, and there were no street lights.
Yeah.
He hadn't been riding under street lights. He was riding in the dark. And then he said the light just sort of went up and just left. And he was in pitch black. And he was just like, I've been riding under street lights for miles.
Wow.
Like,
here's a quick interesting story. When I grew up in Michigan, and I saw a lot of things. But one time I was driving out to a kind of secluded location with a family member. They had a vacation house, which under lots of weird circumstances I ended up living in for a while in a very isolated place.
I think I know this story.
I think it was planned. But anyway, so we're driving and I hear my family member say, "Hey, look, a UFO."
Oh.
What? And I look, and there's there's stars in the sky, but there's one really bright light just sitting there. And we laughed about it a little bit, and I looked away, and then I hear him say, "Wow!" And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "That thing, it just got really bright and then just shot away." And then just wait, and I don't know. We get back to the house, we're all hanging out and chatting and something, and I mentioned the UFO we saw on the way back, and he looks at me and he says, "What are you talking about?" And I explained the situation. He's like, "That's the weirdest thing. If you hadn't said that, I never would have remembered it."
You see, now, that's recurrent.
Cut to 2 years later, I'm driving through the San Fernando Valley with a friend in the broad daylight, and I hear him say, "Hey, look, a UFO." We look up, and there's a bright light. And I'm like, well, this feels kind of weird. And then,
doing it again.
For some reason, I looked away.
Yeah.
I hear him say, "Wow." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "It got really bright and then just shot away." So we get back to the shop where we're working together. This was on lunch break. And later that afternoon, I make some joke about the UFO we saw. And he's like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
We were
out. What is that?
Light. You said it got bright. He's like, "That's so weird. I never would have remembered that if you hadn't told me."
So frustrating sometimes.
And so, like, going back to
I could almost accept it better if they didn't remember it.
Yeah.
But they did, though. Thankfully, though.
With coaxing.
Oh, I know. Now, I mean, this is the same thing with, my wife went through, I went through my visitation and, went and took blood from me. They scared me. They weren't communicating with me. That's what scared me, because I'd read too many books at that point. And usually people will say, yeah, they'll tell you, the telepathic one will say, "Don't worry, this will be over soon. This is for the common good, and you're going to be okay." Yeah, there's no communication with me. It was just like lab rat time. And so I was scared that they were
different doctors, different bedside.
No, I didn't think they were going to. I didn't think I was going to survive. I thought they were just going to, just exsanguinate me, take all my, blood. So anyway, when it stopped, and I, it took maybe 3-4 minutes after they left, and the freaking wall closed up behind them again, that I could move and yell. And I believe me, I was moving and yelling. It was not what I expected. And I asked for it. I was like trying the CE5 thing. I was saying, "I want to meet you. You can abduct me. Go ahead. As long as I can meet you, go for it. You can have DNA. I'm fine with that." That sounded, honest to God, I was sending that out there. And I will tell you, those of you who are watching and listening out there, that a CE5 communication to aliens will work. If you meditate, you have a background in that, you can do it yourself. You don't have to pay Stephen Greer or somebody $3,500. I will encourage you to not do that. But if you go out and you do a star watch, bring a friend with you, please. But go out there and meditate and ask aliens to visit you. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works.
Yeah.
And people have extraordinary experiences. Sometimes they'll just see a light in the sky and it'll shoot off. But for me, it changed my life, but it scared the hell out of me. And my wife thought that I had lost it.
It changed the way
She thought I had lost my mind.
It changed the way you treated people who came to you after that? Because you said you were already in MUFON, right? So
at
the
that,
way you treated witnesses might have probably changed a lot.
We used to talk about, we should get like 3 video cameras and lights and make them feel uncomfortable and see who's lying and who's not.
Yeah.
It's like, no, because people are already are suffering, PTSD. Wow. So you would never, ever do that. And now I know that. And experientially, I know that. Thank God. 2 nights later, my wife was the one who's shaking and waking me up, and the room is flooded with light. Again, it was perfectly silent. You couldn't hear the crickets in the rafters. It was an Oz effect was going on. That just weird, strange feeling that you get when you were having an encounter. And she's like pacing back and forth saying, Earl, you need to tell your little friends to leave us the fuck alone because I already have insomnia and I can't sleep out it. You need to tell your little friends. I'll never forget the little friends thing. And it's like, she hates it when I tell this story. She's watching TV. So, because all she can remember now is what she remembers is she remembers the house flooding with light without a source.
Yeah.
She does not remember little friends, coming through the wall and any of that stuff. But thank God she remembers that. And so we can talk about it. Sweetie, that light is not like a liquid that you pour in, and you need a source for light. So you experienced something.
Oh, so not even just coming through the windows, it just filled.
Oh no, it just filled the house, and that's the way that it usually happens. 2 nights after that, it was coming through the window too. And we both woke up and it was different. The other 2 experiences, I believe they paralyzed us and they did their thing. The third one was, I don't know what, just a hello, I guess. Sanity check, I don't know. But that one, Lisa and I both remember where we went to the window. You could see the light shining from above our house. Even the neighbors' porch lights were turning on. But you couldn't see the craft. It was too bright. It was perfectly silent. And thank God my wife knows that I'm not insane. I mean, Lisa is wonderful now. I mean, she lets me do the UFO thing. And if I talk about it too much, it's just like she don't want to hear ananymore, because it is weird. It's weird shit.
I get that a lot.
Yeah. I get it, I totally get it. I've been on the other side too from that. But thank God, if somebody starts acting like it's all bullshit or thank God, Lisa's right there, immediately. It's just like, how can you think that way? How many stars are there? And we're the only ones? Are you nuts? So she knows. And I think that she probably remembers more than she wishes she does. But now some people call that the gift of forgetfulness, Brian.
Right. My experiences tend to have some of them I have, but mostly no visual memory.
Yeah.
It always starts with a sense of light. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
I sense bright light.
Do you hear audio? Any auditory stuff like a buzzing or anything, or tinnitus before, or
what's that?
Do you ever have any auditory stuff that happens before a visit or abduction?
Not that I correlate with visit, but when I was getting ready to talk about this, I got a really high pitched whine in my left ear.
Oh, you see, that's normal. People get that,
and and I immediately was like, well, that's not something I have all the time.
And you know what's weird? Of all the things we've talked about, I've never felt uneasy while we're talking, and I've been like checking my headphones and looking around my room. And
I don't think the aliens that I met. I don't think they were evil aliens. I don't think they were evil at all. To me, I think they did their job. They were supposed to pull the rug out from under my sense of reality. I think that they're trying to change the way that humans sense reality. That we're stuck with Newtonian physics. We're back in the 1600s, you guys, as far as the way we think. That the universe operates. It's a very nuts and bolts. You drop a rock and it hits the ground sort of stuff. And I think that they're purposely trying to shift us to the reality of things, which is more like magical realism.
Yeah.
Quantum mechanics, it's normal for something to be over here and disappear and for it to reappear over here. That's the normal thing. Spooky action from a distance. That is the normal thing, where something in the next galaxy over can affect, a subatomic particle in your ear, or something in your room. That is the normalcy. It's normal for things to disappear and reappear and all that. This is the way the universe works. But we're stuck in this antiquarian idea that is just doesn't work. It doesn't work with reality. It doesn't work with nuclear principles. It doesn't work with any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're trying to change us because we are on the cusp of what Ray Kurzweil called the singularity, where humans are going to change. We're going to become godlike. We're going to become more like the aliens that we see. With the UFOs that we see in the sky, that's going to be us if things work the way that they're supposed to.
They're just waiting on us to be ready.
We have to be ready. We have to change because we've got our technology is way up here, and our spirituality and our mindset is way back with Isaac Newton. Apple falling off a tree and hitting him in the head, and ooh. There's reality, and it's not reality. And they're changing us. It's a benevolence. We have to go through this change. And it's through ontological shock. They're doing it purposely. They're trying to shock us out of our complacency.
It's like eventually we'll all be abducted, and then we'll all understand.
I think that it's going to be that they're having their way with us, that they're changing us as a species. And I think that we're becoming more like them. And we have to, if we want to become spacefaring ourselves, if we want to be able to travel the dimensions, we want to be
the way we tag fish and how we treat any environment we come across. We analyze it and scoop it out.
We do that.
So they're doing that to us.
They do that too. But I don't think it's a selfishness. I think that it's. I think that there are some races out there that are probably carpetbaggers. They wanted our resources, and I've heard this. There are carpetbaggers out there and DNA thieves, but there are also those who are benevolent and who believe in us and want to see us, go around this.
I want to meet them.
Bend.
Yeah.
I'm not, the couple of people that I've met that I feel probably were ETs that presented themselves as that, and I've heard that a few times, more than a few times, and oftentimes just kind of an eye roll moment. But there are people that I've met who have impressed me. There's one guy he drives his motorcycle. He's independently wealthy. He doesn't have any worldly connections as far as living in a mansion or anything. He just has unlimited resources, it seems like, and goes around on his motorcycle. He's a friend of John Alexander. And he has a couple of people that he stays in touch with. And I hear from this guy every year to 2 years. I'll get a phone call out of the blue. He'll have it so I can't see the phone number, so I can never call him back. But I hear from him, and he says that he's an ET, great sense of humor, smart as hell, and loves good wine.
To Earth.
Yeah, more or less. The other person that I know, who I was introduced to, through people that I know are in the DOD and work at the Pentagon, is the same kind of thing. This is a very intelligent woman. I love her. She's a great friend. I feel like she's a family member, like a sister is the way I treat her. And if this is an ET, I want to be like them. I want to be smart and wise and compassionate. I want to be able to change the timeline if it can make people kinder, or, I mean, I've heard weird things where, I was told that, she intentionally changed the timeline to make things better for Black people. When I heard that, this was told to me by somebody who was outraged by the idea, and was just like, this person needs a human handler so that they don't do this kind of shit anymore. And for me, it was like, well, no, I think that's actually a really good thing. The time needs to be kinder to Black people. So I mean, it's so outrageous, so weird. It's weirder than anything that I ever thought I would encounter. And I really have to, in dealing with this, you don't want to be like a mark or stupid, right? You don't want to fall for crap and disinformation. It's certainly out there. But when I am told something by people who, it's like their current book that's on the bestseller list the foreword was written by Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader from Barack Obama's, run. I mean, I have to take that seriously. I mean, the Pentagon gave them $22 million for their research on Skinwalker Ranch. So, you have to take that seriously. And what I've learned that I have to do is I have to learn to hold two realities, one in this hand, one in that hand, maybe another one. And, my feet are grasping at different realities. But I have to be willing to accept this possibility and that one in order to play this game.
That's the whole point of investigation is... Yes. Like when in our ghost hunting, most of it's tech or spiritual, and you have to embrace both to get answers.
If I go and I think this is so stupid, and I act like every other damned Seth Shostak out there, or I mean all the critics and the people out there that are just debunkery crap. I mean, I'm just going to be doing the same thing, just pushing humankind and any kind of advancement on the back burner. Well, I don't know that we have time to do that. I don't think we have the luxury to do that. We need to change the species. Yeah. So I'm fully engaged, and I'm willing to accept that there is stuff on this planet that is so weird and outrageous that it offends my sense of reality. Yeah. But I have to be able to wrap my brain around that and be able to at least accept it as a possibility and not laugh at the absurdity of stuff. Because I'll tell you, reality is absurd.
Yeah. My favorite stories are one-off stories with no connection. Like a flying green Bigfoot or something, right? That someone saw with all their heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's one sighting of a Bigfoot with big like eagle wings.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, I love that.
Mothman.
Mothman. This was a Bigfoot with green hair, but he had eagle wings, and he tried to take their car off the ground with his feet. It's just, I love that. That one.
I do too. Oh, sorry. Well, that's high strangeness, and that's what I deal in is the high strangeness cases. Those are the ones I find are the real ones. The other ones, light in the sky, unless it shoots up out of the atmosphere, I'll have new field investigators. They'll go, well, I think this really is a real UFO. And I go, well, yeah, it might be, but it's a boring one if it is, because it's not doing anything.
Exactly what's from a movie.
It's not doing anything that I couldn't do with a radio controlled drone, dude. Yeah. So,
well, you know what, guys? I'm getting the light from the office.
All right, we've been on for 2 hours. I think that may be a record.
It flew by faster than any of our other shows.
You know what that means, Earl? You may have to become a monthly guest.
I would happily do that. So
right. We'll talk. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
We got to question 4, and I had
now let me give my public service announcement. If you guys listening out there in Radio Land and Video Land, if this stuff you feel a connection with it reminds you of something that you've gone through, go to MUFON.com. MUFON.com, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON.com. It'll say report a UFO, report if you're an experiencer, if you had a face-to-face contact experience. Go in there, fill out a little report. It'll take you 15, 20 minutes max. And myself or somebody like me will get a hold of you, and we will find out, at least do our very best to try to figure out what you experienced. So there you go.
All right.
Very
Earl,
cool.
I will message you. We will definitely get you back on because
Sounds great.
nobody
Yeah, we
knows
need-
more about this than you do. What was it, Brian?
I was just saying, I have a lot more I'd like to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to talk with all three of you guys
Including
more.
when,
So Mandy and Brian, both of you guys, I haven't heard. I've heard some of Brian's story, but not as much as you told me tonight. And Mandy, I love hearing about your contact experience.
The best
Thank
thing
you.
about
It's-
Mandy's is it correlating with her psychic mediumship. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's nice to be able to share with somebody who's, I mean, you believe it, right? But like, you're open to hearing it, you're open to receiving it, you know? And so it's like, I want to share everything with you because you're willing to
Thank
listen.
you.
Whereas like most of the time I've been laughed at for most of my life when I
Oh, I'm
tell people my stories, you
Well,
know?
now you've
So
got us,
I
too.
appreciate you.
So
It's a very real thing. We're not alone.
Yeah.
And it's absurd. The real stories are the absurd ones, and they're trying to ontologically shock us into evolving further.
yeah.
That's my belief is what's going on.
Definitely.
So
What were
you
saying,
guys are
Brian?
wonderful. I'd love to come back. So
Brian was trying to get
I was
something
going to
out.
say, just in regards to MUFON, 30 some years ago, I attempted to sign up as a field investigator, and was instantly subjected, not by MUFON, instantly subjected to severe intimidation to make it very clear that I wasn't supposed to be doing that.
sometimes that happens. Well, it might be different now. Well,
And
it was a
Brian-
positive thing tonight, and this is what we were,
Mandy,
this is what we
you-
were doing.
You might agree with me, Mandy. Brian's body language is different tonight
Mhm.
Hmm.
than
Yeah.
with usual shows. You're a little
Yeah.
more uncomfortable, and I'm sorry.
Mm.
for
Oh,
that.
I'm fucking miserable. It's good to talk about.
You
it.
know, Brian, you have I think you've got my contact information,
Yeah, I
right?
do.
Stephen does. So if
Yeah, I
anything
just
happens,
do it.
if you need to talk and you need help, if things ramp up and get weird, you
Like I
know how
said,
to get a hold of me, okay?
The thing a couple months ago was the first time that I remember in over 20 years. But,
You get older, it usually, it slows down usually.
I mean, for me, it pretty much ended when I moved to Los Angeles. Then it would happen every time I went to New Zealand, which I did a number of times.
Oh.
Those stories are crazy. Oh my gosh.
We got to
that's so
talk
good.
about, I want to hear, okay?
All right. Well,
We're
you
going to
guys-
do this
And
again.
I want to be able
Yes.
to tell. I want to be able to tell the full story.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not being.
Well, I'll have you on my
broadcast.
podcast once I start it up. Okay, how's that? You know,
Yeah, Well,
the spotlight's on you the whole time.
we're gonna call it for the night.
All
Earl,
right, you guys.
you are the expert on this. If there's
Oh,
anyone out
thank
there that's
you
the
so
go-to for this information, and like I've said, you've been so nice to the team for so long.
Thank you.
And I'm going to contact you soon. So I'm going to call this
Okay.
Earl Grey Part 1.
All right,
Yes.
thank you.
And we're going to get back to it. And for
All right.
everyone watching, thank you so
Beautiful.
much for watching, and good night.
All right, you guys.
Thank you, Earl.
And I'm going to let this guy take over at this point. Okay, my alter